The relentless hum of the fluorescent lights in the vast kitchen of Le Jardin Elegant, Viridia's most exclusive restaurant, was the most familiar sound to Leo Maxwell. At 20, Leo wasn't the flamboyant or boisterous waiter. He moved quietly, almost invisibly, among the tables draped in pristine white linen, yet his every motion held a meticulous perfection. Each knife and fork he laid down was precisely aligned, almost obsessively so. He poured wine with a grace few possessed, not a single drop marring the spotless white fabric. He knew the intricate menu by heart, memorizing every small detail of regular guests' preferences. Mrs. Dubois liked her coffee black with no sugar. Mr. Petrov always requested his steak medium rare with a touch of green peppercorns. His eyes, though often weary from long shifts, still held a keen, observant gleam, searching for beauty in every plated dish, the delicate interplay of ingredients, and at times, the faint shimmer of a quiet culinary passion burning within him. Leo was more than just a waiter. He was a silent apprentice of the culinary world. Through the small window leading into the kitchen, he observed every movement of the chefs, how they chopped vegetables with astonishing speed, how they seasoned dishes with an artist's confidence, how they arranged food like sculpted masterpieces. Late at night, when the city slept, Leo would pore over his worn, grease-stained cookbooks, devouring recipes, pondering ancient secrets, imagining the flavors of dishes he'd never tasted. He dreamt of his own creations, of dishes that could awaken every sense and tell a story. The pungent aroma of sautéed garlic, the rich scent of melting butter, the sizzling sound of searing meat. All were a silent symphony in his mind, fueling a fierce aspiration that far surpassed his current role. He had worked at Le Jardin Elegant for 3 years, and each day was a lesson, a taste of the bitter flavor of inferiority. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how dedicated he was, to Mr. Dubois, the restaurant manager, he was merely a lowly waiter. Dubois was a corpulent, middle-aged man with a potbelly and tiny, beady eyes that constantly regarded others with contempt. He often paced the restaurant with an expensive cane, tapping it loudly on the gleaming wooden floors, each tap a reminder of his absolute power. To Dubois, Leo was just a small cog in the luxurious machine he operated, a tool to serve the clientele he valued, wealthy patrons and powerful investors. He frequently hurled insults, calling Leo a shadow, a dolt, or useless, and always assigned him the most menial, degrading tasks, as if to crush his spirit. Leo endured it all, swallowing the bitter words, because he knew Le Jardin Elegant was the only place he could access the world of haute cuisine he yearned for. It was the only springboard for a dream he had nurtured for so long, a dream of actually creating food, not merely serving it. One gloomy afternoon, a persistent drizzle fell over Viridia, making the streets slick and damp. The atmosphere in the restaurant felt more stifling than ever. The chime of the door announced a young delivery boy, around 15, his thin raincoat clinging to him, who nervously fumbled and dropped an entire tray of expensive crème brûlée right at the restaurant's entrance. The delicate custards shattered on the intricate tiled floor, forming a dismal, creamy mess. Mr. Dubois, standing nearby, witnessed the entire incident, his face contorted with rage, his cane tapping an irritating staccato on the floor. "What is this, you imbecile? What do you think you're doing? Do you know how much a tray of these costs? Pay for it immediately, or I'll call the police," he shrieked at the boy, his voice shrill, his words like sharp knives cutting into the child's absolute terror. The boy's face turned ashen, his eyes welling up, stammering apologies in vain, his slender frame trembling. Dubois even gave him a light kick, as if he were a disgusting obstacle. Leo, returning with a tray of dirty glasses from a table, saw the entire scene unfold. He saw the utter panic in the boy's eyes, a desperate look that mirrored his own from the past. A cold, unexpressed anger surged within him. He couldn't stand by. Swiftly, he put down the tray of glasses and quietly, carefully, began picking up the spilled desserts, every shattered piece, every smear of soiled cream. He knew the value of those pastries and Dubois' harshness. Then he subtly gestured to the boy, a gentle nod, a reassuring glance. "Don't worry," he whispered, his voice low enough only for the boy to hear. "Come inside, don't let him see you." Leo led the boy into the kitchen, a place usually off-limits to waiters like himself. He moved quickly, with a dexterity and knowledge of ingredients few waiters possessed. He swiftly and secretly prepared a fresh tray of pastries from leftover ingredients in a quiet corner of the kitchen. He knew precisely how to use the oven, how to whip eggs, and how to caramelize sugar. In just a few minutes, a perfect, freshly baked, aromatic tray of crème brûlée was ready. He secretly handed it to the boy, offering a reassuring smile. The boy's eyes widened in surprise. Then he stammered profuse thanks, tears still clinging to his eyelashes. "No need," Leo said softly, shaking his head. "Just go. Don't come back here." This act of kindness, prioritizing empathy over fear of reprimand or even dismissal, highlighted Leo's generous nature and strong integrity. It showed he was no ordinary waiter, but a man with a heart and a powerful, quiet resilience. As Leo prepared the new tray of pastries, a small, faded but distinct scar was briefly exposed on his left wrist. The scar looked like a crudely etched miniature chef's knife, but it wasn't a tattoo. It appeared beneath the cuff of his white shirt, just above his wrist. He quickly pulled his sleeve down to cover it, as if it were a secret he didn't want anyone to see. This scar hinted at a mysterious event in his past, perhaps related to a kitchen accident or a painful childhood memory, revealing a cryptic aspect and an untold story. The scar carried a faint, almost imperceptible warmth, a familiar sensation that had been with him since he was very young. It was a mark of a profound, almost fated event that had shaped his destiny and connected him to the culinary world in a unique, deeper way. A reminder that his path wasn't accidental, but preordained, an invisible thread linking him to a forgotten culinary legacy. This scar, a faint trace of the past, was the whisper of a secret, a promise he had had to conceal for years, something even larger than his personal dream. The morning air, usually a canvas of possibilities for Leo as he walked the familiar streets of Viridia, felt different today. It was heavy, laden with a suffocating sense of dread that pressed down on him with each step. His usual route to Le Jardin Élégant, the very path he'd walked hundreds of times, the one that led him to the only place he felt connected to his culinary dreams, was suddenly blocked. A large, garish sign, emblazoned with bold official lettering, declared the restaurant permanently closed for renovation. It was a stark, brutal announcement, devoid of explanation or apology. A chill deeper than the morning air seeped into Leo's bones. This abrupt closure, he instinctively knew, was no mere coincidence, no random bureaucratic decision. It was a direct hit. He'd seen the whispers, heard the rumors circulating among the staff. Mr. Dubois, the restaurant manager, a man whose avarice was as boundless as his arrogance, had been hinting at a grand restructuring. Dubois, who viewed the restaurant as his personal fiefdom and its staff as mere pawns in his financial games, had always shown a blatant disregard for anyone he deemed expendable. He constantly sought ways to cut costs, maximize profits, and solidify his own position, often at the expense of others. Leo, with his humble position and quiet nature, was an easy target, a casualty of Dubois' ruthless ambition. This closure, he suspected, was less about renovation and more about a calculated maneuver to dismiss a significant portion of the staff without severance, a blatant act of corporate callousness, disguised as progress. It was an excuse to sweep away inconvenient employees like Leo, who had witnessed Dubois' questionable practices. The official sign, nailed unceremoniously to the ornate gilded doors of Le Jardin Élégant, directly threatened Leo's livelihood. It wasn't just a ban on serving, it was an attempt to extinguish his nascent culinary dreams, to sever his last tangible link to the world of fine dining. It felt like a personal attack, a deliberate act of professional censorship designed to push him and others like him further into the shadows, out of Dubois' self-serving narrative. The restaurant had been his lifeline, his window into the culinary world he desperately wanted to inhabit. Leo's initial reaction was a bitter cocktail of resignation and profound helplessness. The restaurant was all he knew. Every other promising opportunity he'd pursued in the past had eventually led to dead ends or insurmountable obstacles. This sudden closure felt like the final blow, robbing him of his last shred of dignity and purpose. His first instinct, honed by years of surviving on the fringes, was to simply disappear, to find another menial job, to fade into the anonymous background of the city. He could try to cook in secret, perhaps, or find work in a diner, far from the polished elegance of Le Jardin Elegant. The weight of the city, vast and indifferent, pressed down on him, threatening to crush the last vestiges of his spirit. He stood there for a long time, staring at the closed sign, the rain beginning to fall, mirroring the emptiness in his heart. But as he turned to walk away, his gaze fell upon a small, faded photograph tucked into his worn wallet. It was a picture of his grandmother, her hands flour-dusted, a warm, mischievous glint in her eye as she expertly kneaded dough. She had been a humble but exceptionally talented baker in their small village, known for her comforting bread and her unwavering belief in the power of food to bring people together. She had always encouraged his quiet fascination with cooking, recognizing a spark of genuine talent in him, teaching him the fundamental truths about ingredients and the soul that must be poured into every dish. She had believed that true culinary artistry wasn't about Michelin stars or exclusive clientele, but about passion, integrity, and the ability to nourish both body and soul. This surge of memory, a faint echo of her indomitable spirit and her simple, profound wisdom, ignited a dormant fire within Leo. He couldn't let this injustice stand. He felt a profound moral obligation to fight for the right of genuine culinary talent to exist freely, especially outside the rigid, self-serving definitions imposed by individuals like Dubois. This closure, he realized, was not just a threat to his livelihood, but an assault on the very soul of authentic cuisine itself. It was a desecration of the culinary arts, turning it into a mere commodity. His resolve solidified. He would not disappear. He would not be silenced. He would not let Dubois win. This was his point of no return. Later that afternoon, seeking refuge from the persistent drizzle in the cramped, humid interior of a greasy spoon diner, Leo huddled over a lukewarm coffee. He had nowhere else to go, no immediate prospects, and a growing knot of uncertainty in his stomach. Through the condensation-streaked window, he saw a junior city official, a nervous, fresh-faced man, meeting with a well-dressed older man, whom Leo recognized as the owner of a rival chain of high-end, but notoriously bland, bistros across the city. Their conversation, though hushed, carried across the cramped space. "Mr. Dubois," the bistro owner grumbled, stirring his coffee with exaggerated frustration. "He's trying to corner the market on fine dining. He's telling everyone he's going to open a new culinary masterpiece on the old Le Jardin Elegant site. He's calling it Dubois' Grand Table. He's claiming it's going to be the exclusive, invitation-only establishment celebrating true culinary genius. But it's going to be a disaster. Dubois only promotes what he understands, which is to say, what's established and profitable, not innovative. He despises anything new, anything that challenges his narrow view, especially anything from outside his elite circles. He believes only chefs with a classical academic background from renowned culinary institutes can truly contribute to high-end cuisine. The mention of classical academic background and elite circles struck a deep, resonant chord within Leo. His cup clattered softly against the saucer, a small sound lost in the diner's din. Fragmented memories, not of the harsh, cold streets, but of a grand, sunlit kitchen from his early childhood, suddenly flashed before his eyes. He saw himself, a much younger boy, in that kitchen, filled with the rich scent of simmering stocks, the gentle hum of professional appliances, and the quiet presence of a stern but loving tutor, his grandmother's older brother, a celebrated chef in his own right, whose name he could no longer recall. He recalled patiently being taught intricate classical techniques, lessons far beyond what any self-taught village baker's grandson would typically know. He remembered being surrounded by expensive copper pots, ancient culinary texts, and hushed conversations about his family's legacy. A prominent name in the culinary world, a lineage of celebrated chefs, now seemingly erased from his conscious memory. He'd always dismissed these flashes as childhood fantasies, fragmented dreams from a traumatic, unexplained past. But now, in the context of Julian Thorne's rigid definition of true art, and by extension, true cuisine, they felt chillingly real. He remembered overhearing hushed, angry discussions about a betrayal and a theft of recipes, of a culinary empire that was unfairly seized. The pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving began to click into place. His early artistic prowess with food, the effortless way he understood flavor profiles and complex cooking methods, his innate ability to blend classical techniques with modern expression, it wasn't just raw talent. It was training. It was lineage. And the small, faint scar on his left wrist, shaped like a miniature chef's knife, the one that hummed with a strange, subtle warmth against his skin, suddenly felt heavier, imbued with a new, profound significance. It wasn't just a scar. It was a mark, a symbol of his identity, a physical connection to that lost past. The realization dawned on him with a jolt that sent a tremor through his entire body. Mr. Dubois might not just be a greedy manager. He might be connected to Leo's forgotten past. Perhaps Dubois was even someone who had directly benefited from his family's disappearance from the culinary world, someone whose own standing had been elevated by the systematic erasure of a rival lineage. The very idea sent a mix of fear and righteous anger coursing through his veins. This potential familial connection, combined with the imminent threat to his culinary aspirations, transformed his quiet desperation into a burning resolve. He could no longer remain a silent, dismissed waiter, content to simply survive. He had to confront Dubois, not just to reclaim his place in the kitchen, but to uncover the truth of his own culinary heritage and challenge the very definition of fine dining itself. The battle for the restaurant was now a battle for his identity, his past, and the very soul of authentic cuisine. He would fight greed with integrity, dismissal with mastery. He would return, and he would return as the head chef. The morning air, usually a canvas of possibilities for Leo as he walked the familiar streets of Viridia, felt different today. It was heavy, laden with a suffocating sense of dread that pressed down on him with each step. His usual route to Le Jardin Elegant, the very path he'd walked hundreds of times, the one that led him to the only place he felt connected to his culinary dreams, was suddenly blocked. A large garish sign, emblazoned with bold official lettering, declared the restaurant permanently closed for renovation. It was a stark, brutal announcement, devoid of explanation or apology. A chill deeper than the morning air seeped into Leo's bones. This abrupt closure, he instinctively knew, was no mere coincidence, no random bureaucratic decision. It was a direct hit. He'd seen the whispers, heard the rumors circulating among the staff. Mr. Dubois, the restaurant manager, a man whose avarice was as boundless as his arrogance, had been hinting at a grand restructuring. Dubois, who viewed the restaurant as his personal fiefdom and its staff as mere pawns in his financial games, had always shown a blatant disregard for anyone he deemed expendable. He constantly sought ways to cut costs, maximize profits, and solidify his own position, often at the expense of others. Leo, with his humble position and quiet nature, was an easy target, a casualty of Dubois' ruthless ambition. This closure, he suspected, was less about renovation and more about a calculated maneuver to dismiss a significant portion of the staff without severance, a blatant act of corporate callousness, disguised as progress. It was an excuse to sweep away inconvenient employees like Leo, who had witnessed Dubois' questionable practices. The official sign, nailed unceremoniously to the ornate, gilded doors of Le Jardin Elegant, directly threatened Leo's livelihood. It wasn't just a ban on serving, it was an attempt to extinguish his nascent culinary dreams, to sever his last tangible link to the world of fine dining. It felt like a personal attack, a deliberate act of professional censorship designed to push him, and others like him, further into the shadows, out of Dubois' self-serving narrative. The restaurant had been his lifeline, his window into the culinary world he desperately wanted to inhabit. Leo's initial reaction was a bitter cocktail of resignation and profound helplessness. The restaurant was all he knew. Every other promising opportunity he'd pursued in the past had eventually led to dead ends or insurmountable obstacles. This sudden closure felt like the final blow, robbing him of his last shred of dignity and purpose. His first instinct, honed by years of surviving on the fringes, was to simply disappear, to find another menial job, to fade into the anonymous background of the city. He could try to cook in secret, perhaps, or find work in a diner, far from the polished elegance of Le Jardin Elegant. The weight of the city, vast and indifferent, pressed down on him, threatening to crush the last vestiges of his spirit. He stood there for a long time, staring at the closed sign, the rain beginning to fall, mirroring the emptiness in his heart. But as he turned to walk away, his gaze fell upon a small, faded photograph tucked into his worn wallet. It was a picture of his grandmother, her hands flour-dusted, a warm, mischievous glint in her eye as she expertly kneaded dough. She had been a humble but exceptionally talented baker in their small village, known for her comforting bread and her unwavering belief in the power of food to bring people together. She had always encouraged his quiet fascination with cooking, recognizing a spark of genuine talent in him, teaching him the fundamental truths about ingredients and the soul that must be poured into every dish. She had believed that true culinary artistry wasn't about Michelin stars or exclusive clientele, but about passion, integrity, and the ability to nourish both body and soul. This surge of memory, a faint echo of her indomitable spirit and her simple, profound wisdom, ignited a dormant fire within Leo. He couldn't let this injustice stand. He felt a profound moral obligation to fight for the right of genuine culinary talent to exist freely, especially outside the rigid, self-serving definitions imposed by individuals like Dubois. This closure, he realized, was not just a threat to his livelihood, but an assault on the very soul of authentic cuisine itself. It was a desecration of the culinary arts, turning it into a mere commodity. His resolve solidified. He would not disappear. He would not be silenced. He would not let Dubois win. This was his point of no return. Later that afternoon, seeking refuge from the persistent drizzle in the cramped, humid interior of a Greasy Spoon diner, Leo huddled over a lukewarm coffee. He had nowhere else to go, no immediate prospects, and a growing knot of uncertainty in his stomach. Through the condensation-streaked window, he saw a junior city official, a nervous, fresh-faced man, meeting with a well-dressed older man whom Leo recognized as the owner of a rival chain of high-end, but notoriously bland, bistros across the city. Their conversation, though hushed, carried across the cramped space. "Mr. Dubois," the bistro owner grumbled, stirring his coffee with exaggerated frustration. "He's trying to corner the market on fine dining. He's telling everyone he's going to open a new culinary masterpiece on the old Le Jardin Elegant site. He's calling it Dubois' Grand Table. He's claiming it's going to be the exclusive, invitation-only establishment celebrating true culinary genius. But it's going to be a disaster. Dubois only promotes what he understands, which is to say, what's established and profitable, not innovative. He despises anything new, anything that challenges his narrow view, especially anything from outside his elite circles. He believes only chefs with a classical academic background from renowned culinary institutes can truly contribute to high-end cuisine." The mention of classical academic background and elite circles struck a deep, resonant chord within Leo. His cup clattered softly against the saucer, a small sound lost in the diner's din. Fragmented memories, not of the harsh, cold streets, but of a grand, sunlit kitchen from his early childhood, suddenly flashed before his eyes. He saw himself, a much younger boy, in that kitchen, filled with the rich scent of simmering stocks, the gentle hum of professional appliances, and the quiet presence of a stern but loving tutor, his grandmother's older brother, a celebrated chef in his own right, whose name he could no longer recall. He recalled patiently being taught intricate classical techniques, lessons far beyond what any self-taught village baker's grandson would typically know. He remembered being surrounded by expensive copper pots, ancient culinary texts, and hushed conversations about his family's legacy. A prominent name in the culinary world, a lineage of celebrated chefs, now seemingly erased from his conscious memory. He'd always dismissed these flashes as childhood fantasies, fragmented dreams from a traumatic, unexplained past. But now, in the context of Julian Thorne's rigid definition of true art, and by extension true cuisine, they felt chillingly real. He remembered overhearing hushed, angry discussions about a betrayal and a theft of recipes, of a culinary empire that was unfairly seized. The pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving began to click into place. His early artistic prowess with food, the effortless way he understood flavor profiles and complex cooking methods, His innate ability to blend classical techniques with modern expression. It wasn't just raw talent. It was training. It was lineage. And the small, faint scar on his left wrist, shaped like a miniature chef's knife, the one that hummed with a strange, subtle warmth against his skin, suddenly felt heavier, imbued with a new, profound significance. It wasn't just a scar, it was a mark, a symbol of his identity, a physical connection to that lost past. The realization dawned on him with a jolt that sent a tremor through his entire body. Mr. Dubois might not just be a greedy manager. He might be connected to Leo's forgotten past. Perhaps Dubois was even someone who had directly benefited from his family's disappearance from the culinary world, someone whose own standing had been elevated by the systematic erasure of a rival lineage. The very idea sent a mix of fear and righteous anger coursing through his veins. This potential familial connection, combined with the imminent threat to his culinary aspirations, transformed his quiet desperation into a burning resolve. He could no longer remain a silent, dismissed waiter, content to simply survive. He had to confront Dubois, not just to reclaim his place in the kitchen, but to uncover the truth of his own culinary heritage and challenge the very definition of fine dining itself. The battle for the restaurant was now a battle for his identity, his past, and the very soul of authentic cuisine. He would fight greed with integrity, dismissal with mastery. He would return, and he would return as the head chef. The aroma of freshly baked bread, rich simmering sauces, and perfectly roasted meats that usually clung to Leo's clothes like a second skin was noticeably absent as he stepped back onto the now barren street. The vibrant energy of Le Jardin Elegant, once a living, breathing entity, was gone, replaced by the sterile silence of construction and the cold, unyielding presence of the permanently closed sign. He was adrift, a chef without a kitchen, a dream without a home. The dismissal, delivered with a callous shrug by Mr. Dubois, had stripped him of his daily purpose, leaving a void that echoed with the manager's sneering voice. He tried to find work, any work, in other restaurants, but the city seemed to conspire against him. Every inquiry met with a polite refusal, every potential lead turning into a dead end. It was as if Dubois, with his vast network and insidious influence, had somehow blacklisted him, ensuring he remained on the outside looking in. Days bled into weeks, weeks into a month. Leo, for the first time in years, felt the cold touch of true despair. He survived on meager savings, eating instant noodles and cheap bread, a stark contrast to the exquisite dishes he once plated. He spent his time wandering the streets of Viridia, drawn instinctively to the bustling markets, watching chefs haggle for fresh produce, his hands itching to touch, to taste, to create. He'd stand outside busy restaurant kitchens, listening to the clatter of pans and the shouted orders, a ghost haunting the edges of a world he desperately wanted to re-enter. His old, worn cookbooks, once a source of comfort and inspiration, now felt like a cruel reminder of a dream that was slipping away. He missed the heat of the kitchen, the organized chaos of service, the tactile pleasure of turning raw ingredients into something beautiful and delicious. The thought of giving up, of accepting defeat, and finding a simple, non-culinary job began to creep into his mind, a seductive whisper of surrender. But then, the dull ache in his chest would be pierced by a sudden, subtle warmth on his left wrist. The faint scar, shaped like a miniature chef's knife, would begin to hum, almost imperceptibly, against his skin. It was a sensation he'd experienced intermittently since childhood, a comforting presence that often accompanied moments of profound clarity or intense emotion. He knew, deep down, it was connected to his forgotten past, to the culinary legacy he dimly remembered. It was a silent, insistent reminder that he was meant for more, that his connection to the culinary world ran deeper than a mere job. It was a constant whisper of defiance, urging him not to succumb to the bitterness of dismissal. One particularly desolate afternoon, as a cold rain began to fall, Leo found himself taking refuge in the dimly lit, dusty archives of the Viridia Public Library. He wasn't looking for cookbooks today. He was searching for answers, a desperate attempt to piece together the fragmented memories of his childhood. He pored over old city directories, microfiche records of forgotten businesses, and newspaper clippings from decades past. He was searching for any mention of his grandmother's brother, the renowned chef, the grand kitchen, the family name that had vanished. As he meticulously scrolled through a digitized archive of local business licenses from 50 years ago, a name, almost hidden in a long list, jumped out at him. Le Coeur Gourmand, operated by the Maxwell Culinary Collective. His breath caught in his throat. Maxwell, his own surname, and Culinary Collective, a phrase that hinted at a lineage, a shared passion. His eyes scanned the details. A famous restaurant, renowned for its innovative French cuisine, particularly celebrated for its mastery of traditional techniques with modern twists, and its iconic dessert, a signature crème brûlée with a unique caramelized sugar crust. The description of its grand, sunlit kitchen perfectly matched his fragmented memories. And then, his gaze snagged on a paragraph detailing a bitter legal dispute, a hostile takeover, led by a ruthless business associate named Henri Dubois, a distant relative of the original owner, who had systematically orchestrated the Maxwell family's downfall, seizing their recipes, their property, and their reputation, erasing their name from the culinary landscape. The article detailed how Henri Dubois had rebranded the restaurant, stripped it of its soul, and eventually sold it off, its legacy forgotten. It was a thinly veiled account of betrayal and theft, a narrative of ambition crushing artistry. A small, blurry photograph accompanied the article. A younger, almost unrecognizable Mr. Dubois, his face smug, standing next to a stern-looking man who bore an uncanny resemblance to the older Dubois, his father perhaps, or an uncle. The realization hit Leo with the force of a physical blow. The faint, warm hum on his wrist intensified, almost painful in its clarity. This wasn't just about a job. It was about his family, his heritage, his stolen legacy. Mr. Dubois, his tormentor, the man who had dismissed him so cruelly, was directly descended from the very person who had destroyed his family's culinary empire, who had erased his name from history. The Le Jardin Elegant that had become his only window into the culinary world was built on the ruins of his own family's dream, now resurrected by the very descendants of those who stole it. The renovation was a rebranding, a new layer of polish on a deeply tarnished history. He found another article, much older, describing a tragic fire that had destroyed the original Le Coeur Gourmand kitchen shortly after the hostile takeover, and a young boy, the last surviving member of the Maxwell line, rescued from the flames, bearing a distinctive scar on his wrist. The scar, the forgotten memories, the name Maxwell, the stolen recipes. It all connected with terrifying precision. His entire life, his innate culinary talent, his inexplicable affinity for classic techniques. His very being was steeped in this buried history. This wasn't just a challenge to find a new job. This was a direct confrontation with his past, a battle for his identity. He felt a surge of cold, furious resolve. He wouldn't just find a new restaurant. He would reclaim what was rightfully his. He would take back his family's legacy, not through legal battles. He had no resources for that. But through the only language he truly spoke, the language of exceptional food. He would return to that restaurant, not as a waiter, but as its true culinary heir. He would reveal the secret ingredient, his own undeniable talent, rooted in a stolen legacy, ready to bloom anew. This was his point of no return. The grand dining room of what was once Le Jardin Elegant now shimmered with an almost suffocating aura of calculated opulence and ruthless ambition. Under Mr. Dubois' meticulous, tyrannical direction, it was being meticulously prepared for its grand reopening as Dubois' Grand Table. This was no mere relaunch. It was to be his magnum opus, a public testament to his impeccable business acumen and unparalleled influence, an establishment designed to solidify his legacy and permanently cement his rigid definition of true fine dining. Yet for Leo Maxwell, this glittering monument to elite gastronomy was becoming a gauntlet, a symbolic arena where he would face his ultimate test. The polished silver and gleaming crystal felt less like tools for enjoyment and more like the cold, sharp instruments of a public dissection. Every velvet drape, every hushed whisper of a white-gloved assistant, seemed to reinforce the chasm between his world of genuine passion and Dubois' realm of cynical profit. Leo found himself profoundly alone in this fight, a solitary figure against a well-oiled machine. He gained entry to the new establishment only through an improbable stroke of luck, Or perhaps a twist of fate orchestrated by the universe itself. A week before the grand opening, a small independent culinary magazine, Viridia's Hidden Gems, known for its adventurous palate and willingness to champion overlooked talent, put out a last-minute call for a guest chef to assist with a pre-opening tasting menu review. Their previous chef had fallen ill. Desperate, Leo had submitted an anonymous but incredibly detailed proposal for a dish he'd been perfecting. A deconstructed crème brûlée that incorporated a subtle, unexpected savory element, a homage to his grandmother's unique touch. The magazine, intrigued by the bold concept and the meticulous planning, unknowingly offered him a lifeline disguised as a trial. This gave him limited, supervised access to the kitchen during the hectic final preparations for Dubois' grand opening. It was a perilous, strategically challenging position, placing him right inside the lion's den. Dubois had begrudgingly allowed the magazine's presence, viewing it as a necessary evil for early publicity, a minor inconvenience he intended to control. His plan was to highlight the conventional, bland perfection of his own executive chef's creations, publicly ridiculing any unconventional additions from a guest, to reaffirm his contempt for anything outside his rigidly commercial purview. He saw Leo, if he even noticed him at all amidst the chaos, as merely a temporary, easily dismissed culinary curiosity, a shadow soon to be swept away. Ilara Chen, a sharp independent food critic for Viridia's Hidden Gems, was Leo's unwitting ally. She was known for her discerning palate, her fiercely independent reviews, and her relentless pursuit of culinary truth, often clashing with the mainstream critics who bowed to commercial pressures. She had been observing Leo discreetly during his initial trials, intrigued by the quiet intensity in his eyes and the surprisingly complex flavors of his trial dishes. She recognized a genuine artistry that transcended mere technical skill. Ilara, with her sharp mind and even sharper wit, saw in Leo not a humble waiter, but a raw, untamed talent, a genuine artist whose spirit resonated with her own belief in food's transformative power beyond the confines of tradition. Her initial review of Leo's deconstructed crème brûlée was glowing, though still anonymous, hinting at a culinary genius yet to be fully revealed. But in the quiet, agonizing moments before the true grand unveiling, as Leo stood amidst the frenetic energy of Dubois' new kitchen, his hands trembling slightly as he prepared his signature dish for the official pre-opening tasting, he was on his own. The pressure to create something truly transcendent, something that could pierce Dubois' armor of arrogance and commercialism, weighed heavily on him. He felt the overwhelming solitude of the true artist, the solitary burden of conveying truth and beauty in a world that often valued neither. He often found himself staring at the blank slate of a new plate, the pristine surface reflecting his own self-doubt back at him. Could he truly transcend the ingrained prejudice, the very system that sought to diminish him and his family's legacy? The stakes were immense, and a cruel twist of fate, orchestrated by Dubois, added another layer of pressure: time. Mr. Dubois had cunningly manipulated the grand opening schedule. The official unveiling of the full menu, and by extension, Leo's specific dishes for the culinary magazine's review, was slated for the opening night, a mere 48 hours away, placing him directly in the spotlight. Not only would this maximize the public spectacle of Dubois' anticipated triumph, ensuring the widest possible audience for his self-congratulation, but it also left Leo with barely enough time to perfect his chosen dishes. A 5-course tasting menu that subtly integrated the forgotten techniques and signature flavors of his Maxwell family legacy with modern presentation. He envisioned a menu that would not just be delicious, but a profound statement, a narrative of resilience rising from the depths of culinary struggle, a testament to food's ability to transcend mere sustenance and touch the soul. He planned to incorporate subtle, almost hidden elements of his grandmother's unique baking methods, and the faint, almost imperceptible scar on his wrist, into the presentation of the dishes. A silent defiance, a whisper of his true lineage, a signature only those with eyes to truly taste would recognize. The chosen theme for his menu was Rooted and Revived, depicting classic dishes reborn with unexpected twists, their flavors a journey through history and innovation. The ambition of the menu matched the immensity of the challenge. Dubois, meanwhile, was not content with mere commercial success. He dispatched his most trusted and ruthless executive chef, Chef Antoine, a man known for his rigid adherence to classical French techniques and his deep loyalty to Dubois, to apply constant pressure. Antoine was a master of subtle sabotage, a shadow moving through the kitchen, his presence a constant, unsettling reminder of Dubois' reach. He had bribed minor kitchen staff to report on Leo's progress, ensuring Dubois was kept abreast of every ingredient, every moment of hesitation. He orchestrated accidental spills near Leo's prep station, ruining small portions of his precious ingredients. He ensured vital, specialized equipment, a rare mandolin, a specific type of copper pan, were misplaced or broken when Leo needed them most, forcing him to improvise, to adapt, to push himself beyond his limits. He arranged for constant, demoralizing whispers about Leo's lack of formal training, about his peasant background, about the inherent amateurishness of his culinary approach within Leo's earshot. These were delivered by seemingly innocuous kitchen apprentices, their smiles polite but their words sharp as shards of glass. Leo, hyper-aware of these insidious tactics, felt the tightening vice of Dubois' malevolence. Every moment was a battle, not just against the clock and his own self-doubt, but against the insidious forces actively working to undermine him. His culinary endurance, already stretched by years of hardship, was now pushed past the breaking point. The chill of the walk-in freezer, ironically storing the finest ingredients, felt colder than any empty street corner he'd ever known, a stark reminder of the frigid reception awaiting his dishes if he failed. He forced himself to block out the whispers, to find a rhythm in his movements, to let the food speak for him. He remembered the little delivery boy's grateful smile, the genuine appreciation in his eyes for a simple act of kindness, and that small memory became a shield against the psychological warfare. He thought of his grandmother, her fierce spirit, her belief in food's power to connect, not divide, to bring joy, not profit. As the hours bled into the next day, Leo barely slept. He fueled himself with lukewarm coffee and the sheer force of his will. His hands ached, his eyes burned from the steam and the long hours. But his dishes began to take shape, their forms emerging from the chaos, a vibrant testament to resilience. He incorporated discarded vegetable scraps into rich, intensely flavored stocks, creating an interplay of humble origins and refined execution. He worked tirelessly, driven by a desperate need to not only finish the menu, but to imbue it with a message that would defy Dubois' narrow vision of haute cuisine. He subtly integrated elements of the scar's shape into the plating of his signature crème brûlée, making it almost imperceptible unless one knew exactly where to look. A silent personal signature, a mark of defiance and a claim to a forgotten legacy. The ultimate test wasn't just about the food itself, it was about Leo's resolve. Could he, a dismissed waiter who had faced indifference and dismissal his entire life, find the inner strength to confront the most powerful and dismissive voice in the culinary world? Could he channel his trauma, his lost past, and his burning sense of injustice into a singular, undeniable culinary statement that would resonate beyond the dining room walls and expose the hypocrisy of those who sought to define food for their own gain? The very essence of his identity, the validity of his unique culinary voice, hung in the balance. The kitchen before him, once a symbol of boundless possibility, now felt like a battlefield where he fought not just for himself, but for every aspiring chef whose voice had been silenced, every piece of culinary beauty dismissed as unworthy. He was alone, armed only with his talent, his truth, and the faint, humming warmth of the scar on his wrist beneath his sleeve. The clock was ticking, the seconds bleeding away, and the culinary world, oblivious to the deeper currents, waited to witness a public execution. But Leo, amidst the pressure, felt a strange calm settle over him. He was ready. The grand dining room of Dubois' grand table crackled with an almost unbearable tension, thick with the scent of expensive truffles, polished silver, and thinly veiled anticipation. The pre-opening tasting gala, a carefully orchestrated spectacle for Veridia's culinary elite and influential food critics, was in full swing. Blinding spotlights gleamed off crystal stemware, and the murmur of hundreds of distinguished guests created a hum of hushed expectation. Mr. Dubois, resplendent in a tailored, dark suit that seemed to absorb and reflect the room's opulent light, stood at the small stage. a smug, self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. He had just finished a lengthy, self-congratulatory speech, extolling the virtues of his vision and subtly, yet undeniably, denigrating any culinary approach that dared to deviate from his rigid, commercially driven aesthetic. His voice, a smooth baritone, filled the vast hall, each word chosen to reinforce his unchallenged authority. The crowd, a sea of glittering faces, hung on his every pronouncement, ready to echo his disdain, to confirm their own superior taste. Leo's tasting menu, his rooted and revived collection, was discreetly positioned at a side table in the Emerging Culinary Talents section. It was a section Dubois had grudgingly allowed, viewing it as a necessary evil to feign open-mindedness, a space he intended to fill with bland, easily dismissible offerings. His plan was to highlight Leo's dishes as the epitome of amateurish, unconventional cooking, publicly ridiculing them to reaffirm his contempt for anything outside his classical purview. He saw Leo as a convenient scapegoat, a living embodiment of everything he wished to discredit. Leo stood nearby, a solitary figure amidst the throng, his borrowed chef's whites feeling like a costume, stiff and alien against his skin, a poor disguise that made him feel more exposed than ever. His heart pounded, a frantic drum against his ribs, a rhythm of both fear and fierce determination. He could feel the weight of every dismissive glance, every whispered comment about the unknown cook who had somehow infiltrated their hallowed halls. His hands, hidden deep in the pockets of his apron, clenched around the small, faint scar on his left wrist, its presence a silent talisman of his lost lineage and his defiant truth. He had poured every ounce of his being into these dishes, and now they were about to be judged, not just by critics, but by an entire world that had long dismissed him. Dubois approached Leo's table, a wireless microphone now clutched in his manicured hand. His smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes, a glint of pure, anticipated triumph. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice dripping with saccharine condescension, amplified by the dining room's state-of-the-art sound system, "we come to a selection from our Emerging Culinary Talents section, a rather unconventional choice of dishes, one might say, an attempt perhaps to bridge the gap between, well, let's call it home cooking and actual haute cuisine." A ripple of polite, knowing laughter went through the crowd, a collective agreement with Dubois' unspoken judgment. While I believe in fostering new talent, it is my duty, as a restaurateur, to guide aspiring chefs towards true aesthetic and commercial principles. And sometimes that guidance must be firm, painfully firm, if necessary. He savored the chuckles, his eyes darting towards Leo, a subtle taunt. He paused for dramatic effect, letting the anticipation build, the silence stretching taut as a violin string. Then, with a theatrical flourish that seemed designed to emphasize his dominance, he lifted a silver cloche from Leo's signature dish, the deconstructed crème brûlée with its savory twist. A collective gasp swept through the dining room, sharp and audible, followed by an abrupt, stunned silence. Leo's dish, whispers of the orchard, blazed forth, a defiant explosion of color, aroma, and form, utterly defying Dubois' condescending expectations. A delicate, perfectly caramelized sugar crust, infused with a subtle hint of rosemary, sat atop a rich, creamy custard, not of vanilla, but of roasted parsnip, its earthy sweetness a revelation. Beside it, a perfectly sculpted quenelle of applewood smoked bacon gelato offered a surprising counterpoint of savory and sweet. Tiny, edible flowers and microgreens, meticulously arranged, formed an intricate pattern on the plate, a miniature landscape of culinary art. The overall effect was breathtaking, raw, inventive, yet undeniably elegant, a testament to beauty found in unexpected combinations. It was a bridge between two worlds, a visual and gustatory dialogue between tradition and innovation. And hidden within the intricate patterns of the microgreens, subtly interwoven into the delicate caramel lattice, was a tiny, almost imperceptible shape of a miniature chef's knife, a silent, defiant signature from his ancestral past, a mark that only those with a keen eye or a deep secret would recognize. Dubois, for a fraction of a second, froze. His smug smile vanished entirely, replaced by a flicker of raw, unadulterated shock then a mask of furious contempt. His jaw tightened, a vein throbbing visibly in his temple. He had expected crude, amateurish attempts, an easy target for his acid tongue. He had not expected this. He had not expected beauty, complexity, and a subtle mastery that defied his every prejudice, a dish that elegantly refuted his entire worldview. He raised the microphone, his voice now strained, a thin tremor in his carefully controlled tone. As you can see, a bold choice of flavors. But technique, alas, cannot overcome a lack of traditional presentation. It is a chaotic representation, lacking the purity of classical forms. Before he could finish, before his dismissive words could regain their power, a familiar figure moved swiftly and purposefully through the stunned crowd. It was Alara Chen, the sharp, independent food critic, her eyes alight with a mixture of professional awe and triumphant satisfaction. She had noticed the subtle knife motif. She had recognized the fusion of flavors, the undeniable raw talent beneath the humble presentation, the mastery that belied Leo's unknown status. She strode purposefully to the side of Leo's table, a wireless mic already in her hand, having seized the opportunity presented by Dubois' momentary stutter, his unexpected loss of composure. "What you see before you, ladies and gentlemen," Alara's voice rang out, clear and resonant, cutting across Dubois' bluster like a sharp, clean cord, "is not merely an unconventional dish. It is a culinary masterpiece, a true fusion of classical discipline and raw, innovative authenticity. Look closer, taste it. This isn't just talent, this is lineage." She pointed a slender finger to the small knife motif in the plating, now brought to brilliant light by the dining room spotlights. "And this motif," she continued, her voice gaining power, resonating with a quiet authority that rivaled Dubois' own. "The miniature chef's knife, a symbol deeply intertwined with the lost Maxwell Culinary Collective, a family whose legacy was tragically cut short, and whose unique culinary secrets were thought to be lost forever, perhaps even suppressed." Dubois' face turned ashen, draining of all color. He lunged for Alara, his composure completely shattered, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Silence, you fool! You know nothing. This is a farce," he hissed, his voice raw with pure, unadulterated panic, his eyes wide with desperate fear. Chef Antoine, Dubois' ruthless executive chef, a burly figure with cold, predatory eyes, suddenly materialized from the kitchen, attempting to grab Alara, his movements swift and brutal. This was the bated breath moment. The crowd, initially stunned into silence by the dish's unexpected beauty, then by Alara's audacious pronouncement, now murmured with confusion, then outright shock. A Maxwell Culinary Collective? Lost secrets? Dubois' desperate, uncharacteristic outburst, his unbridled fury, confirmed their deepest suspicions. The polished veneer of the dining room crumbled into chaotic whispers, then shouts. But before Antoine could reach Alara, before Dubois' panic could completely engulf the scene, Leo, fueled by a surge of righteous fury and the buzzing warmth of the scar on his wrist beneath his sleeve, acted. He lunged forward, not at Antoine, but towards Dubois, his movements precise and driven by years of suppressed truth. With a powerful, desperate motion, he ripped the small, faded photograph from his own wallet. It swung briefly, catching the light, before he threw it with surprising force. The photograph, glinting in the spotlights, soared through the air, a paper bird of truth, directly towards Dubois' face. Dubois instinctively caught it, his reflexes honed by years of quick thinking. But the unexpected impact and sudden pressure of his fingers on the old paper made him look at it. It was a picture of Leo's grandmother, the talented baker, standing proudly beside her brother, the original head chef of Le Coeur Gourmand. And in the background, unmistakably, was a younger, almost identical Mr. Dubois, Henri Dubois, the ruthless business associate from the library archives, shaking hands with Dubois' father, a sinister smile on his face. It was a photographic portrait from decades ago, a stark, undeniable proof of a deep, illicit connection, a secret hidden for a lifetime. The photograph, now clutched in Dubois' hand, reflected the blinding lights of the dining room. A quick-thinking photographer from Alara Chen's Viridia's Hidden Gems team, alerted by Alara to expect something dramatic, had been perfectly positioned. The camera zoomed in, and a crystal-clear, magnified image of the photograph's contents flashed onto the giant LED screen behind Dubois, usually reserved for promotional videos. The crowd gasped, a collective, visceral sound of shock and horror. The image was undeniable, irrefutable. Dubois' family, actively involved in the takeover of the Maxwell Culinary Collective. The public realization was immediate and devastating. Dubois wasn't just dismissing an unknown chef, he was connected to him. He was not merely an abusive manager, he was a family member, deeply complicit in the very lost lineage he so vehemently scorned. He had profited from the destruction of Leo's family. The reaction of the witnesses was a cathartic explosion of emotion. The murmuring crowd erupted into a chaotic roar. Faces, moments before filled with polite indifference or veiled condescension, transformed from haughty skepticism to outright shock, then to a collective, thunderous recognition and a furious demand for answers. Gasps turned into shouts, whispers into cries of fraud, thief, conspiracy, the Maxwell family. Reporters, initially focused on Dubois, now swarmed Leo and Alara, their microphones thrust forward like a hungry pack. Dubois, on stage, stood utterly frozen, the photograph clutched in his hand, his face a mask of utter devastation and exposure, his entire world crumbling around him in a cacophony of public condemnation. The triumphant arch of his curated career had just collapsed, not under the weight of a poor review, but under the undeniable, crushing truth of a hidden, despicable lie, exposed by the very legacy he sought to bury. The vindication for Leo was absolute, swift, and publicly witnessed by the entire culinary world. The chef had truly risen. The grand dining room of what was once Le Jardin Elegant, moments ago a stage for Mr. Dubois' calculated triumph, had become the scene of his spectacular, irrefutable downfall. The triumphant blare of news sirens, previously a distant hum, now converged directly on the restaurant, their flashing lights casting an urgent, chaotic glow over the stunned elite. Mr. Dubois, his face a mask of utter devastation, his meticulously coiffed hair now disheveled, stood frozen as uniformed officers moved swiftly, decisively, to apprehend him. The faded photograph, Leo's photograph, which had revealed its damning secret in Dubois' own hand, was carefully retrieved by an officer as evidence, secured in a clear plastic bag. Dubois was no longer the untouchable titan of Viridia's culinary world. He was a disgraced criminal, his empire built on deceit now crumbling into dust. He offered no resistance, his arrogance finally shattered by the irrefutable truth that had so dramatically burst forth from a humble dish. The charges against Dubois mounted swiftly, a cascade of legal repercussions echoing the decades of his family's deceit. He faced not only unprecedented public humiliation, but a torrent of criminal charges: massive fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice, and the systematic destruction of evidence related to the erasure of the Maxwell Culinary Collective lineage. The subsequent investigation, fueled by the widespread public outrage and the undeniable evidence from Leo's photograph and the unearthed archives, peeled back the layers of Dubois' carefully constructed life. Detectives uncovered a meticulously planned scheme dating back decades, initiated by his father, Henri Dubois. A calculated manipulation of wills, the forging of ownership documents, and the ruthless suppression of records to ensure they inherited vast culinary assets, exclusive recipes, and historical properties that rightfully belonged to Leo's maternal line, the true Maxwell Culinary Collective. His entire career, built on a foundation of lies and stolen legacy, crumbled. His immense wealth, derived from illicit gains and the exploitation of a stolen heritage, was seized by authorities, and his public image, once synonymous with refined taste and unimpeachable judgment, was irrevocably destroyed. Mr. Dubois became a damning symbol of corporate greed and familial betrayal, his name forever synonymous with deceit and hypocrisy. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, stripped of everything he had valued, a lonely figure in a sterile cell. Chef Antoine, Dubois' ruthless executive chef, was also arrested, implicated in multiple felonies, including conspiracy and attempted assault on Alara Chen. His unwavering, silent loyalty to Dubois ultimately sealed his own grim fate, proving that even a powerful enforcer could not escape the long arm of justice. For Leo Maxwell, the initial shock of vindication slowly gave way to a profound, almost overwhelming sense of relief. The whirlwind of media attention eventually subsided, leaving behind a quiet, burgeoning sense of peace, a weight lifted from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he carried. He was unequivocally proven alive, his true identity as the last living heir of the Maxwell Culinary Collective restored, not just legally through court documents and public record, but in the eyes of a world that had once dismissed him as nothing more than a humble waiter. His long-lost family inheritance, a vast collection of antique culinary equipment, original recipe books dating back centuries, historical properties steeped in culinary tradition, and significant financial assets, was finally returned to its rightful owner. He found himself, almost overnight, a man of immense wealth and a figure of profound public interest, an unlikely hero who had unearthed a truth that shook the culinary world to its core. But Leo, having endured years of destitution and betrayal, had no interest in personal luxury or opulent living. His heart, shaped by the harsh realities of serving others, and the quiet dignity of his grandmother's humble bakery, where he had once found solace and learned the true meaning of food, guided his choices. His newfound resources were not for personal indulgence. They were for a far more meaningful purpose. His first act, even before the last of Dubois' assets were fully catalogued, was to use his legal standing and the public's overwhelming support to immediately overturn Dubois' previous dismissals of staff, ensuring that those unfairly treated under Dubois' management were rehired or compensated. It was a symbolic victory that resonated deeply with the city's hospitality community. He then channeled a significant portion of his inheritance into an ambitious project, the Maxwell Culinary Institute and Community Kitchen. This initiative purchased and transformed the very building where Dubois' Grand Table had been unveiled, the former Le Jardin Elegant itself. It was no longer Dubois' exclusive domain, a gilded cage for elite dining, but a public trust. He meticulously renovated it, overseeing every structural and aesthetic detail, transforming it into a modern, thriving hub for culinary education, nutritional support, and authentic culinary expression for all, especially for Viridia's most vulnerable and underserved populations. He installed state-of-the-art, free professional kitchens for aspiring chefs, vocational training programs focusing on sustainable food practices and healthy cooking, and a dedicated wing for culinary therapy for at-risk youth, offering a path to healing and self-discovery through the joy of food. He personally oversaw every detail, from comfortable study nooks to brightly lit, airy communal dining spaces, ensuring every corner resonated with inclusivity, a stark contrast to the restaurant's former atmosphere of cold elitism. He renamed it the Maxwell Hearth, a powerful symbol of warmth, community, and culinary rebirth, rising from the ashes of Dubois' prejudice, echoing the theme of his pivotal dish. Within months, it became a vibrant sanctuary, a beacon of hope, offering nourishing food, hands-on learning, and genuine opportunity to hundreds, a living monument to food's power to heal and unite. Its success was widely documented, serving as a blueprint for similar initiatives nationwide. Beyond the Maxwell Hearth, Leo recognized the profound culinary divide that often trapped talented individuals from disadvantaged communities. He leveraged his resources and newfound influence to establish the Maxwell Legacy Foundation, a global nonprofit dedicated to fostering culinary education, providing grants for unconventional food ventures, and preserving culinary freedom worldwide. His vision was clear: to empower young chefs, regardless of their background or preferred style, to use their creativity for social good, to bridge gaps, not widen them, to create a world where good food was a universal right. He personally spearheaded programs to bring fresh produce and cooking lessons into impoverished neighborhoods, proving that a kitchen could be found anywhere. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed recipes from marginalized culinary traditions throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again, tirelessly advocating for food as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. His tireless efforts and genuine humility quickly earned him the respect and admiration of chefs and philanthropists globally. Weeks later, a quiet, almost serene afternoon found Leo sitting with Laura Chen and his newly appointed operations manager, Mr. Jean-Pierre Dubois. the distant, estranged cousin of Julien Dubois, who had secretly helped Leo with access to information during his investigations. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating newly polished surfaces and sturdy, comfortable seating within the Maxwell hearth. The room, once Dubois' private office, now served as a collaborative space for the Foundation's advisory board, a place where ideas flowed freely and openly. The entire building hummed with the joyful sounds of children in a new cooking class downstairs, their laughter echoing through the renovated halls, the quiet murmur of conversations in the communal cafe, and the focused hum of chefs at work in the state-of-the-art training kitchens. It was a stark, comforting contrast to the cold, imposing silence it once held under Dubois' tyrannical gaze. Ilara, now a celebrated Pulitzer-winning food critic for her fearless role in exposing Dubois, leaned back in her chair, a contented sigh escaping her. She had written extensively about the Maxwell family's true history, bringing their lost culinary contributions to light. "It's incredible, Leo," she said, gesturing around the vibrant space, her voice tinged with genuine awe. "From a dismissed waiter to the head of this entire culinary empire, you've not only reclaimed your legacy, but you've transformed an entire institution. You've achieved something truly extraordinary. You've shown that true culinary art isn't just about what's on the plate, but the heart and history behind it." Leo, now dressed in comfortable, elegant chef's whites that reflected his inner serenity rather than ostentation, looked at the small, faint scar on his left wrist. It was no longer a hidden mark of shame or trauma. It now seemed to glow faintly, almost imperceptibly, under the warm afternoon light, a constant reminder of his journey. Ilara, without his knowing, had taken a discreet photograph of it during one of their kitchen visits, incorporating its unique shape into the new Maxwell Hearth logo. A subtle, artistic rendering of a chef's knife intertwined with a wheat stalk, symbolizing both his personal history and the sustenance his foundation now provided. "It was my anchor, wasn't it?" he mused, tracing the faint lines of the scar with his thumb, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. "It reminded me who I was, even when I had forgotten. It reminded me of the promises I made to myself, to my grandmother, to never let the past define me, but to let it fuel me. And it held the truth." He looked at Ilara, a silent acknowledgement of her belief in him, and then at Jean-Pierre, for his unwavering support and partnership in exposing the truth. "It reminded me that even when I had nothing else, I still had my truth, my art, and the belief that light always finds a path, even in the deepest darkness. And that, my friends," he added, his eyes shining with a profound gratitude that radiated from within. That was everything. His journey, once marked by profound suffering and betrayal, was now illuminated by an unwavering purpose, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the transformative magic of food itself. The whispers of the past no longer haunted him. They guided him, reminding him that even the smallest spark of creativity could ignite a revolution, and that true legacy was built not on wealth or fame, but on genuine human connection and shared passion. The once familiar bitterness of the urban wind no longer carried the sting of indifference for Leo Maxwell. Now 23, his frame was no longer gaunt, but strong and graceful, his spirit vibrant, his eyes alight with a profound sense of peace and purpose. Viridia, once a backdrop for his despair, had become a thriving testament to his enduring compassion and the transformative power of food. The Maxwell Hearth, which he had painstakingly brought to life from the ashes of Dubois' elitist restaurant, had flourished beyond his wildest dreams. It was no longer a nascent project but a national model, with bustling branches in 5 major cities across the country, providing comprehensive support to thousands of formerly food-insecure individuals and families, and serving as dynamic culinary hubs. Each hearth was a testament to his vision: free professional kitchens humming with creativity, vocational training programs teaching practical cooking and sustainable food practices, and dedicated wings for culinary therapy, particularly for at-risk youth, offering solace and self-expression through the joy of preparing and sharing meals. Leo, though no longer directly managing the daily operations of the Maxwell Hearth, remained its guiding spirit. He was a beloved fixture, often seen walking through the communal spaces, his presence a quiet anchor for those still navigating their own paths to recovery. He would sit with young residents in the new cooking labs, his hands gently guiding them through basic knife skills, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. His words were always gentle, always encouraging, carrying the weight of lived experience and the light of hard-won hope. He often led informal workshops on innovative cooking techniques, demonstrating how delicious, nourishing food could be found and created anywhere, with any ingredient. His former dishes, once served in secret or to a few appreciative patrons, had found a new, legitimate home, celebrated for their raw honesty and evocative power within the very walls that once would have scorned them. His life, once defined by loss and isolation, was now overflowing with purpose, camaraderie, and the profound satisfaction of truly making a difference. He was honored as a hero, not just for his tenacity in seeking justice, but for his enduring compassion and his unwavering commitment to lifting others. Leo dedicated a significant portion of his time to ensuring that no other deserving young person would suffer his fate. He became a passionate advocate for food literacy and ethical culinary practices on a national level. His voice, once a whisper, now clear and resonant as he advised congressional committees on equitable access to nutritious food and culinary education. He didn't just speak, he acted, collaborating closely with Alara Chen, his steadfast ally, who had since won a Pulitzer for her investigative journalism that exposed Dubois. Leo co-authored a memoir titled The Chef's Scar: From Shadows to Light. The book, a raw and poignant account of his life, from his forgotten childhood to his years of destitution and ultimate reclamation, became an unexpected bestseller. It resonated deeply with readers across the nation, inspiring widespread empathy for the food insecure and driving significant, tangible policy changes within government funding allocations for community support programs, especially those focusing on culinary arts and vocational training. Crucially, a significant portion of the book's proceeds went directly back to the Maxwell Hearth Foundation and the Maxwell Legacy Foundation, ensuring their long-term sustainability and continued expansion. The Maxwell Legacy Foundation had also soared, establishing innovative culinary learning centers and vibrant cooking schools in underserved communities globally. Leo personally led workshops teaching young people, especially girls, how to cook, how to critically analyze food systems, and how to use culinary skills as tools for social good. He believed that culinary expression, combined with food literacy, was the key to unlocking future potential. He provided grants for unconventional food ventures, ensuring that initiatives like urban farming, pop-up kitchens, and food trucks received the recognition and funding they deserved, challenging the narrow definitions that Dubois had once enforced. He also established the Dubois Deception Scholarship, an irony not lost on him, fully funding higher education for bright, ambitious students from impoverished families, ensuring that talent, unlike his own past, was never suppressed by circumstance. The scholarship's motto, etched subtly on each recipient's certificate, was, "From hunger, hope takes flight," a direct nod to his own arduous journey and the symbolic chef's knife scar that had guided him. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed recipes from marginalized culinary traditions throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. He worked tirelessly to establish access to good food as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. The story culminates on a warm, golden afternoon in the sun-drenched central courtyard of the flagship Maxwell Hearth in Viridia. The courtyard, meticulously tended by residents and volunteers, was a vibrant oasis of calm, alive with the buzzing of bees among newly planted herb gardens, the soft murmur of conversations from a communal cafe, and the distant, joyful sounds of children engaged in an outdoor cooking class. Leo sat on a rustic wooden bench, custom-built by the Hearth's vocational carpentry program. The bench's design subtly incorporated elements of the chef's knife from his scar, its intricate curves carved into the polished wood. He was surrounded by a small group of young students from the Maxwell Legacy Foundation's mentorship program. They listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of respect and quiet hope, as he shared a story not of grand victories, but of small acts of kindness that had kept his spirit alive during his darkest days. He emphasized the importance of resilience, of finding nourishment in unexpected places, and of using one's unique voice to create change. These young individuals, once facing uncertain futures, were now empowered and thriving, their eyes holding the promise of new beginnings, a testament to the hearth's transformative power. In his hand, Leo held a small, beautifully polished silver chef's knife charm, custom-made to precisely match the shape and size of his scar. Its surface, gleaming under the afternoon sun, reflected the verdant hues of the courtyard and the bright, hopeful faces of the children. The intricate details of the miniature knife, once a painful reminder, now shone with renewed brilliance, a testament to his enduring legacy. He turned the charm slowly in his palm, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. The faint, warm hum that had always accompanied his scar seemed stronger now, a comforting presence. The symbol of the chef's knife, once a private mark, was now incorporated into the Maxwell Hearth's official logo, subtly etched onto the entrance sign, its blade slicing through a wheat stalk, symbolizing sustenance and freedom, embodying the upliftment the center provided. He looked up, his eyes, once weary and shadowed, now reflecting a deep, serene joy and an unbreakable spirit, as he watched a group of children from the hearth playfully release a flock of homing pigeons into the clear blue sky from the rooftop garden. The pigeons circled once, twice, then flew off towards the horizon, a powerful gesture symbolizing hope, freedom, and the promise of a brighter future for all. The dismissed waiter, once forgotten, had not only unveiled a family secret that changed everything, but had become the architect of a new, more compassionate world where good food truly belonged to everyone. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path, even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.